So this week on the Conscious Cup podcast, I talked to my friend Kathy Eldon from Creative Visions Foundation. Creative Visions is inspired by the life of Dan Eldon, a 22-year-old Reuters photojournalist who was killed in Somalia in 1993. After his death, his mother and sister, Kathy and Amy Eldon, discovered 20 journals bursting with collages, reflecting his adventurous spirit and his life as a creative activist. A collection of Dan's journals, The Journey is the Destination, has sparked individuals around the world to live more fully with compassion and purpose. Kathy and Amy founded Creative Visions in 1998 to support other creative activists who are using their creativity for good, just like Dan. Kathy Eldon is a multi-talented individual who has excelled in various fields such as film and television production, journalism, and writing. She has worked in England, Kenya, and the United States throughout her career. As an accomplished author, Kathy has written 17 books, including cookbooks, self-help books, social history books for students, and the best-selling collection of her son's journal pages, The Journey is the Destination. She has also authored the popular Catcher series of guided journals. Her memoir, In the Heart of Life, published by Harper One, has received critical acclaim. Her most recent book, Hope Rising, A Musing, is a collection of spoken word poetry that inspired a 90-minute special featuring notable figures such as Julian Lennon, Marianne Williamson, and Kwaku Mandela. Today, Creative Visions Foundation has incubated over 400 projects and productions across 5 continents, making a difference in the lives of more than 100 million people. Kathy remains actively involved in the foundation while continuing her writing career. Hi, Kathy. Welcome to the Conscious Cup. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, but I wish you were here to give me that cup of whatever it is, brew that you've got going over there.
Yes, I'm addicted. It's a problem, as you can see by my setup behind me.
I love it.
Yeah, thank you for being here. We've known each other for a little while. Our family has known you. I would love, just by listeners, if you could just give an overview of who is Kathy Eldon and what is Creative Vision.
You didn't prepare me for this one.
That'll be 30 minutes.
No, thank you. I'll do it pretty fast. I'm a creative activist. I'm a person who believes passionately in the power of a creative spark that every single one of us has inside us to do wonderful things in the world, not only for ourselves, but also for others. I am the founder of Creative Visions, which is an organization that supports storytellers like Simone to tell stories that need to be told about problems that need to be solved and bring people together for that collaboration that will really create positive change in our world. I write books, I make films, I'm a nana, and I've got a new animation project for kids. And I'm just pretty passionate about being here and excited to be able to hear the questions and try to share anything that I can that might help inspire, mobilize other people out there listening.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. So, okay, I know a lot about the story with your son, Dan, but for those who don't know, could you give a little overview about his life and how that has led you to Creative Visions Foundation?
You know, I was very privileged to have a son. He only lived for 22 years, but the profound impact that he made on the world around him and then the greater world has left me with nothing but joy. Originally very sorrowful at his loss. Dan was a young artist. He was a creator. He was a collaborator. He was a mischief maker, but he led a group of 15 kids across Africa to bring aid to a refugee camp in Malawi. And included on that trip was Christopher Nolan, the great director, and Jeff Gettleman, who's now one of the top writers from the New York Times, and a load of other remarkable then 17 to 19-year-olds. Dan grew up in Kenya and became a photojournalist with Reuters news agency. I had been a journalist with the largest English language newspaper in Kenya, and he sort of went far beyond stepped out of my footprints to really do extraordinary work as a young photographer covering war. Tragically, he, together with 3 other young people, young journalists were killed in Somalia. on July 12th, 1993, which is almost exactly 30 years ago. He was 22 years old when he was killed, but he left behind 20 journals, which have fueled 4 books, 3 documentaries, and a feature film based on his life and his perspective on life, which is that everybody can be a change maker, and you don't have to be wildly clever or wildly educated or wildly rich or anything. You can look around you and see what needs doing and roll up sleeves and just go out and do it.
I love that. I love that. Go out and do it. I feel like that's so much of um, the core of who I am as a person and what my parents have instilled in me. So kudos to you, because I feel like he had a great impact in the short time he was here. And though he was gone too soon, he's left those ripple effects of change. And that's been carried on. You've carried on his legacy for him. So
Many
thank you
other
for that, and
people.
created your own.
Just the other day, I got a call from a Navy SEAL who had run into his book when he was at the University of Colorado, this beautiful guy, Mike Champion, and he ran into Dan's book. And the concept of the journey is the destination, which is the name of the book, literally fueled his desire to travel the world and see the world in a very different way. He joined the Navy and then became a Navy SEAL. And it's like, wow, I never would have thought Dan would have necessarily inspired that journey. But he's now retiring, and at his sort of going out service or celebration, he has the journey as a destination in Arabic, which is so profound
Oh,
for me.
wow.
So, yeah, and I get these calls. I run into people all the time who have been influenced by Dan's message that the journey is the destination, that safari is the way of life. Seek solutions, not problems. Little simple phrases that actually are profound in the impact they can make on our lives if we just remember them.
Yes. I was going to say, what do you think? The journey is the destination. I'm sure some people have seen that on social media somewhere, and they don't realize that's Dan Eldon. So I was wondering, what do you think that meant to him when he wrote that and when he
I
made
think
these
he was,
beautiful artworks and paintings?
I thank you for that. What he also said on the same page is there's little difference between exploring and being lost, and what is the difference between exploring and being lost? And then he said the journey is a destination. I think we often feel we have to be destination goal oriented and have that clearly in mind, and we mustn't veer, and we must achieve certain objectives and tick them off, the boxes. And for Dan, that was not, he discovered that in his world that wasn't really what it was about, that you don't know how long you are going to last on this earth. You're only dancing on this earth for a short time. And there's a song, Cat Stevens, though you want it to last forever, you know it never will, you know it never will. And you may as well really make every moment matter, every moment of that journey, every encounter that you make. And of course, we're not going to, because we forget, but every encounter that we have, we should try to make the very best of it without being so goal oriented. Maybe our goal is to make the best of every single moment, and the future will take care of itself. Although, of course, we can have a vision of where we want to head. But there are many way stations, obstacles, challenges, unexpected things that happen, as we all know. So let's make the most of this minute.
I love that. You are very seize the day. I know when I first met you, I was like, who is this woman? I would love you to tell people. So for those who don't know, I interned, or I was a visionary, a summer visionary at Creative Visions Foundation when I was in college. But I originally met Kathy through my older sister, Abby, who got connected to you through another friend, I believe. And I think the first day I was there, you took me and the other visionaries to the wishing rocks. So I'd love you to just tell people, what are the wishing rocks?
Oh,
What
I
do they
love
mean to
that.
you?
Thank you. Very early on, when I moved to Los Angeles, I was so broken, so utterly broken. And I had already created the production company Creative Visions. And the word Creative Visions is inspired by a book called Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain. And it's just like, how do you envision what you really want to do, be, see, marry, have, be around, manifest. And it's very much about the power of visualization, creating visions. And I ended up envisioning a man who I wanted to be with, writing a book called Love Catcher and manifesting the almost perfect example of this character. There were a few things I forgot to tick on the box. I could have asked for more patience for the guy, or one or two things but I ended up with a remarkable man who had an extra house, which he was renting to another remarkable man. My daughter married the other remarkable man, John Turteltaub, who was then directing National Treasure, a great director. And I married Michael. And Michael, very early on, would walk me to these rocks. And they were giant rocks underneath a restaurant, which is now called the Chart House on Topanga Beach. And he would touch the rocks in a certain way. And I started to follow that pattern. And whenever I touched the rocks, I envisioned what I wanted to see in my life, who I wanted to be with, how I wanted to feel. I envisioned a center for creative activism. I envisioned grandchildren. I envisioned a lot of things. And I called them the wishing rocks. And really, they could be called the intention rocks or the vision rocks or the manifestation rocks. But I think everybody in life can create their own version of that. That when you go on a walk around the block, have a place that you sort of stop and you touch and you say, wow, let me just focus on what I really need to manifest in my life. That's not only good for myself, but also for others. And I think that power of that and for others is really important because I must say we really have manifested it. Due to climate change, there's terrible erosion on our beach and haven't been able to get to the wishing rocks. So I'm going to go today. I'm going to put my waders on and cross the river and go to celebrate you.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. And that was such a fond memory I have of my first day at my new internship. I was so nervous, and you guys were so lovely there. Just Kathy, if you ever get the chance to meet her in person, she is just a wonderful connector of so
Thank
many,
you.
just a symphony of people that she knows and can connect you to. And she loves telling stories. And I think there's something about, I don't know, like what your thoughts are in this, but I feel like the wishing rocks is very symbolic of just like it's sort of grounding. It's like whenever we have grief or we struggle with depression or anxiety or any of these issues, something about nature that really is able to center and ground you in a way that nothing else can, I feel like.
I love what you're saying. And I think being able to get out of yourself, and go breathe, try to breathe. Lately, it hasn't been easy for people with the particulates in the air. I know that's challenging, but to be able to get out and just know that things are bigger than we are. I think that 4 o'clock in the morning is a dangerous time when we wake up and our troubles and our problems just like surround us. And it's if we can get to 7 a.m. and get up and get out, things will look better in the morning light, I think. As Bob Marley always said, every little thing's going to be all right. And I added that, and things will look better in the morning light. So yes, nature is a key. Another thing that's interesting is Isak Dinesen, Karen Blixen, who wrote Out of Africa. She said all sorrows can be born if you can make them into a story. And if you can get your journal out and tell the story of whatever it is, get it out, write a poem, draw a picture, just smear something, but get it out of you. Find someone to tell that story to, call up a friend. Just don't hang on to it all by yourself. That's deadly, really is not healthy.
Yes,
Share.
you encouraged me in that. Actually, I don't know if you remember our conversation. I think it was in 2019. My gosh, it was right before these pandemic years. I feel like blend together.
Yeah.
but
Yes. Sure.
um, but yeah, it was right before the pandemic. I had since I have some health issues,
Oh,
and I had a massive flare up with my joints, and I couldn't walk, and I was in just excruciating pain. And I remember just kind of calling you out of the blue, and you were like, write it down, record it. Even if you can't write, just, record it on your phone. And I still have those recordings and I have listened to them since. And it's just crazy to think of, like, I've grown so much since that time. And now I've been, writing on my little typewriter and just trying, like you said, to get it out, because I think that's what it is. There's a great book that's very famous, right? The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van Kolk. And he talks about anything traumatic that you've been through, anything stressful, that our bodies, they can hold that in and trap that emotion, and you have to find a way to release it. And there's actual
Oh,
sime behind this. So it's not just,
yeah.
woo woo, like people are
No,
thinking,
Hayes, there was a woman, her first name, Hayes, who wrote about that back in the 80s. And I remember when I went through a really rough patch, I was profoundly ill and really deathly ill. And it, I know, was a function of grief, stress, pain, internalized pain. And it, again, if we can get it out and get help, and whether it's, professional help, spiritual help, whatever it is, just, share it with those who can help us. And often we feel terribly alone. And when we're depressed, often I think I remember somebody said your aura's bound round you tightly like a blanket, and I pulled my aura in like a blanket. And when your aura is in like a blanket, you're not attracting anybody. Nobody will notice you. They will walk right by you. And, when you can project whatever, and that's hard. That when you're depressed, it's almost impossible to do that. So somehow we have to rely on other ways than having our taxi light on. I always, to people who want a partner in life, I said, put your taxi light on. You have to be committing something to, so
I'm
somebody will slow
available.
down and pick you up.
Yeah.
And but
Yeah.
that's hard when we're depressed. It's
Yeah.
really extremely difficult.
Yeah. I know I've struggled with depression, and many of my listeners probably are struggling with it. But I know in your memoir, In the Heart of Life, you talk a little bit about your depression and when you first moved to Malibu and all of that. And so I was curious, how do you think other people can turn their pain into purpose? Oh, there it is. There, she's got the
Yeah,
book.
sorry. This is the In the Heart of Life.
Yeah.
That was a long journey to get this book out because
Yeah.
it's very hard to figure out what is important for other people to read about your life and
Yeah.
what's not important, So it took me a long time to do that. I think turning pain into purpose, it sounds so impossible when you're in that pain. When Dan was killed, honestly, I think I would have imploded. The grief was so profound. And that was following grief of having gone through a divorce of a good man, and the pain and guilt that I felt around that, exponentially compounded by the murder of a child, and the grief and the shame, a lot of shame involved. So for me, in the end, or very early on, it was I had to transform it or I would have died, emotionally, spiritually, probably physically as well. Somehow, something inside of me would have remained dead. But I was committed to not dying. I had a 19-year-old daughter, so that, that I had a reason to live. As sometimes, we feel like there's no real reason to live when we're sad. And then it's somehow we have to rise above that nihilistic perspective and get the help we need and the help we need inside ourselves too. And that's hard to reach that deeply into ourselves. But I remember Shakti Gawain in the book Living in the Light talks about these crisis times when it's like we're falling and we're going to hit the bottom, but then it's like a trap door opens and it's like you're aware that there is this spiritual dimension around us, whether you want to call it your religious beliefs or an awareness of consciousness that goes beyond just what we can see and touch and feel, but there's more, and that we can rely upon to embrace us and support us and lift us up. And that's what I did at that time, and relied on that invisible force, call it what you will, God, energy, source, whatever you want, to embrace you, and then and you interact with that, and then together really shape where you're headed, the vision of where you're headed, and know that the journey is a destination. and that every day is a
That's
challenge.
incredible. That's incredible. Because I think as human beings, we're so inclined to like, I can handle it, I can do it on my own, I can do
Yeah,
this. But sometimes life just really knocks you down. And what would you say to those people that are feeling that same shame, maybe different circumstances, but um, what is the first step to getting out of that? How do you just
thank
get out
you.
of your head and just
Yeah, I think
and
right now
start?
there's something even more challenging than the individual pain that we may be feeling about individual circumstances in our lives. And I think there's a sort of existential grief, pain, shame that's going on, which is more of a planetary thing that we're grappling with so much that's so hard. And so somehow we have to rise above the hopeless, helpless sense that sometimes we feel to say, hey, wait a minute, we're going to do this. Collectively, we are going to do this. Individually, this is what I can do. And you don't overreach because we need to be realistic in what we ourselves can maybe manage, but know that we can come together, heal ourselves, and I believe the planet is for the future of children. Lately my only focus is the future of kids. And I've got a project which relies on yellow goggles, putting on your yellow goggles when you go out to play, and you'll see the world in a very different way. You'll see the good and the bad, the glad and the sad, Greek grumps with the grin, and find magical ways out of the trouble you're in. And best of all, you'll see we instead of just me, 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 which is a stupendous way to be. So that's my philosophy now is it's not rose-colored glasses, it's yellow goggles where you see how we can come together, collaborate to find solutions to the challenges we're facing.
I love that. Yeah, not rose-colored goggles or glasses because I feel like that's another lie too, right? In life, you think, oh, everything is meant to be good for me, but really it's through the hardest things that happen to us that can have the most lasting and profound impact in a positive way on our lives. And so it's kind of ironic, but yeah, that's amazing. I would love, yeah, for you to share a little bit more about this animation project.
Well, it's just enormous fun, and I want to create Harper's World, which would be a resource center. So, Simone, you and your viewers and readers out there, any ideas you have for things that will boost the mental health of little kids? My project is designed for 4 to 7 year olds. It's based on the concept of positive psychology, which is being taught in many places, but it was sort of started at the University of Pennsylvania. So, what are resources? What are books that we could recommend for caring adults? Whether they're grannies or teachers, educators, or parents, for little kids to become more resilient, more creative in their problem solving, able to grapple with what they're going to face when they're teenagers. And that right now, as you well know, there's an epidemic of mental health issues amongst teenagers and college kids and beyond. So, how can we equip the babies to be stronger as they face these challenges? So
That's great.
this is an ask. This is a please help
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, everyone, you heard her.
Yeah, send your ideas
Yeah.
into Simone. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, with that, I would love to hear. I mean, the basis of this podcast is very much tied to mental health, which is, I don't know, that's something that's very important to me. I think it drives us, it drives how we run our businesses, how we are at home, how we are in our relationships. But how do you personally combat the lie that you need to have it all together to do something meaningful or to continue the work that you're doing?
Every day is a journey. Is do I have anything together? I would say probably not necessarily.
Mhm.
So I would be the perfect example of, oh boy, you sure don't have to worry about having it all together to achieve things. I think the older you get, and the more in the world you get, the more you realize that everybody's kind of bluffing. And I say that honestly, I really believe that. The kind of, we look when we're younger and we look around and we think, oh my gosh, the government must really know what they're talking about, the government, or those leaders of industry or whatever and actually everybody inside themselves, I always think there's a kind of a set point at which we're probably stopped growing, and I wanted to do a project for my daughter when she was going off to college, which was doing drawings of her most biggest authority figures, the the dean of students, president of the college, and then reducing them to 6-year-olds with, their shirt tail is out and they've got a runny nose, and say, you know what, that's the way they feel inside. Chances are. And if you can
Yeah.
deal with another human being, it's namaste. The God in me salutes the God in you, and be authentically loving and caring about that other human being, and try to see beyond the trappings, whatever's trapping that person in his heart and soul and mind, and really just try to operate by being that authentic, positive human being. And it's hard. I'm not saying you have to be Pollyanna, and I know that there are times when we cannot be positive. But if you can find something that's positive about the other person that you can connect to, that in itself will take you a long way. And you, Simone, when you were a visionary with us, it was always like, what can I do to help? Roll up sleeves. How can I help? Where am I best? Where's my talent? Essentially, my talent, my gift best utilized. It's not waiting for other people to mobilize you. It's like, what can I do? How can I roll up sleeves? And it's not being the cleverest person in the room or the most educated or the richest or any of that. It's being, the word is enthusiasm. Enthusiasm means with God, en plus theos. Isn't that cool? It's like that God energy
Wow, I
flowing
never
through
knew
us.
that.
I, I, I love that so
Yeah.
much. And if you can try to, and that does require a make believe you're brave sometimes. Make believe you're brave is a wonderful song. Sometimes we have to make believe, and the trick will take you far. You may be as brave as you make believe you are. And we have to pretend and play the role until we kind of get there. So again, that may sound not authentic, but it's a good little gimmick, okay?
No, I
It's
love
authentically
that.
making believe, right?
I love that. Yeah, no, sometimes you have to, it's almost, I liken it to having faith in my mind. It's sort of like walking a tightrope. That's how I picture myself. And
Yeah,
sometimes the only way to exercise my faith is by taking steps on that tightrope and trusting,
yeah,
like, for me, it's God, but trusting, like, okay, God's got me. Like, he's not going
yeah,
to let me, like, fall to my death,
yes, yes,
that
yes.
the only way that I'm able to grow is if I just start taking those steps. And instead of judging, I think there's a lot of judgment we have on others or we have on ourselves based on our various upbringings and experiences that color our views, where it really is sometimes that simple to just take one step, one foot in front of the other.
For
Kind
sure.
of like you said, and like you said, with that enthusiasm too, to be like, okay, like things can get better. We
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
keep going.
And
So
this too shall pass is another very important phrase that I was told. And there's another one, an Irish phrase or Scottish, what's for you won't go by you. So if you're really, really worried
mm,
about whatever it is, what's for you won't go by you.
I
So
love that. I love that.
yeah,
Yes.
there, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
to close out our conversation, it's quite a simple question, but I'd love to just hear about who inspires you most and why.
Wow, that's a brilliant question. Who inspires me most? I'm very privileged because every single day I have 3 or 4 conversations with creators who are creating projects about telling stories that need to be told, about problems that need to be solved. Right now, you inspire me most. Yesterday, it was a conversation about old people and how they can be mobilized. And before that, it was a conversation about psychedelics and how they can be used for healing. So every day, 3 or 4 times a day, I'm inspired by people who come to me with incredible projects, come to creativevisions.org with incredible projects that they need fiscal sponsorship for, they need a bit of guidance, whatever. So it's a kind of hourly competition to see who inspires me most that day. And
Mhm.
I wake up in the morning thinking, oh my God, I'm so privileged to be able to be inspired. And this morning, I have to confess, I felt very weepy and melancholy. And I went up to our center and I put on, I say, Alexa, play Bob Marley. And Bob Marley came on with every little thing's going to be all right, and no woman, no cry. And I just, I cried a little and then I laughed because I thought this is perfect.
Yeah.
So Bob
Oh,
Marley inspired me today too.
I love that. It's a collection of things. It's not just one thing. It's like a beautiful mosaic.
Yeah, everything
I love
it can
that.
inspire us. I'm just looking at some gorgeous orchids right in front of me, and they're so beautiful. So that's inspiring me right now too. So thank you,
I
Simone, for
love
letting me
that.
be inspired. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us as our first guest on the Conscious Cup. And yeah, for those who would like to know more about you and about Creative Visions, where can they go?
KathyEldon.com and creativevisions.org and daneldon.org, I think, too. You can
Perfect,
share that.
perfect. And we'll
Yeah.
link those in the show notes for people. But thank you again.